Hello, my name is Ian Jennings, and this is my final project micro lecture over current and emerging rural health issues in the Southeast United States by Andy Sharma. For my final, I chose to cover Chapter 5, which is Emerging Health Issues and Natural Disasters. It discusses how increased rate and severity of adverse weather events and natural disasters in southeastern United States impact accessibility and continuity of healthcare systems, which consists of emergency care and lifelines framework, social vulnerability, which also composes of rural communities, the social vulnerability index, which is classification, and at the end there's an emphasis on kidney dialysis patients, but we'll get to that. Before I get into the nitty-gritty, we need to understand what an adverse weather event is. It refers to meteorological conditions that can have detrimental impacts on the environment and human health due to their duration, frequency, and intensity. Sharma 97. These adverse weather scenarios usually depict storms, hurricanes, floods, and tornadoes. They're considered severe when they at least reach 58-mile-per-hour winds, hail at least 1 inch diameter, and may or may not form a tornado. And then each state has this thing called incident type, which indicates which state is more common for specific types of adverse weather events. And these types help guide resource allocation and prioritization. And then you know the difference between shocks and stressors. Shocks are generally short-term, while stressors are long-term and are more of a slow burn. And differentiating them as such helps communities prepare for and recover from natural disasters. And to understand how these weather events affect these health systems, it's important to utilize a lifelines framework, which consists of analyzing communications, energy, food, hydration and shelter, hazardous material, health and medical, safety and security, transportation, and water systems. And seeing which systems are more vulnerable than others indicates where resources should be allocated. Other than healthcare systems, it is important to note the Social and Vulnerability Index, which refers to a community's capacity to prepare for and respond to the stress of hazardous events, which indicates community resilience and stressors. And the SVI has four themes, which is socioeconomic status, household characteristics, racial and ethnic minority status, and housing type and transportation. In the textbook, it applies adverse weather conditions and how it impacts individuals with renal disease and require kidney dialysis. Specifically, individuals in Louisiana and Natchitoches, which has a primarily black population and moderate poverty rate, highest top fourth quintile of overall social vulnerability, has a relatively low risk index, a very high social vulnerability index, community resilience is relatively low, has a high risk factor for weather events, and it's in summary, it needs to prioritize renal disease residents' access to reliable care and knowledge of dietary protocols. It needs to emphasize their care in events that these occur. Now, I believe that Chapter 5 most pertains to the healthcare policies mentioned in Module 2, which composes leadership and management, as the chapter emphasizes identifying communities who are at need in adverse conditions as well as a necessity to plan to execute support. Leadership and management are not the same concept, but are both necessary for proper care. As leadership is the process of influencing people toward a shared vision, emphasizing motivation, change, and direction. And there's different types. As strategic leadership would identify incidents type for resource allocation, health systems at risk, which is especially important because when medical centers and transportation infrastructure are damaged, patients who need chronic care such as dialysis, wound care, or chemotherapy seek to resume care at alternative sites or else risk substantial harm or even death. And a social vulnerability index, community resilience, and network leadership would connect health systems together toward a collective goal/purpose, and regions together to assist one another in adverse weather conditions and natural disasters. While on the other hand, management focuses on planning, organizing, executing, and controlling resources to achieve specific objectives. After identifying the problem and connecting health systems across regions together, a plan can be coordinated, such as where and how to send resources during an adverse weather event, such as to rural areas or residents with health disparities, and then planning recovery after natural disasters. And as quoted by a government website, disaster assistance includes providing support to communities and survivors for response to, recovery from, and resilience to man-made and natural disasters. GAO. The main conclusion/takeaway of how Module 2 connects with Chapter 5 is that the increasing severity of adverse weather events and natural disasters in southeastern United States urges the need for strong leadership and management through application of leadership types, management roles, identification of what regions are at risk for what, vulnerable health systems, individuals most at risk in each region, resource allocation, recovery process, and reinforcing preventative measures for future events. Thank you for listening to my slideshow presentation. Hope you have a wonderful day.